I am Adam Parker, 30 years old, living alone in a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. My life is nothing special. I work at an auto repair garage from morning till night, come home, collapse into bed, and on weekends I drink beer by myself or watch football on an ancient TV. No wife, no kids, not even a relationship that's lasted more than a few months. I like it that way, simple, uncomplicated. But that night everything changed in the blink of an eye, as if fate were mocking the fragile peace I'd built for myself. I'd just pushed open the door to my apartment, my legs aching after a 12-hour shift. The smell of grease still clung to my clothes, and all I wanted was a shower and to fall face first into bed. My place isn't anything fancy. One living room that doubles as a kitchen, a cramped bedroom, and a handful of cheap furniture pieces picked up from flea markets. Neon light from the bar across the street spilled through the window, casting long, eerie shadows across the worn wooden floor. I dropped my backpack with a thud, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and was about to collapse onto the couch when my phone rang. The ring cut sharply through the silence. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number, local area code, but not one I recognized. My heart gave a little jump, the way it always does with strange calls. Probably a telemarketer, or worse, a wrong number debt collector. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the decline button, then thought better of it. What if it was something urgent from the garage? I sighed, accepted the call, and put the phone to my ear. "This is Adam. Who's this?" A woman's voice came through, rushed and urgent enough to make me freeze. "Mr. Adam Parker, this is a teacher from Evergreen Elementary School on the outskirts of town. You need to come pick up your daughter right now. Alice is waiting and we're about to close. Where are you?" My heart stopped. It felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. "Daughter? Alice?" I blinked, trying to process. "What? You've got the wrong person. I don't have a kid. I'm single. Never been married. Check the number again." Her voice didn't waver. "No, sir. Alice Parker's file clearly lists her father as Adam Parker with this exact phone number and a Portland address. If you don't come now, we'll have to call the police. This is considered child abandonment, you understand. She's only 4 years old. We can't leave her here alone." My mind went completely blank. I stood there, beer still in my hand, feeling the floor sink beneath me. Alice Parker. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but not mine. I don't have a child. God, I haven't even had a serious girlfriend since college. This had to be a mistake, or a cruel prank. Someone hacking my information? I tried to keep my voice steady, but my heart was pounding. "Listen to me. I do not have a daughter. Someone must be using my name. Check the records again or put the principal on the phone." She sighed, sounding even more tense. "Mr. Parker, we've already verified everything. She has a family photo and all the information matches perfectly. If you don't come, we will call the police. She's crying because she's waiting for her dad. Do you want to hear her voice?" A chill ran down my spine, icy cold, like an Oregon winter wind cutting straight through my bones. I tried to think, could this be a joke? Someone from the garage messing with me? Or a scam, some kind of extortion? But her voice, it was frantic, responsible, not an ounce of playfulness or hesitation. This was the voice of a real teacher, genuinely worried about a child. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead, even though the apartment was warm. A gnawing suspicion wormed its way into my gut. But deeper than that, a vague, unsettling dread tightened my chest. I spoke, my voice shaking. "All right, I'm coming. Give me the exact address." She read it out, then hung up. I stood there for a few seconds, phone still in my hand, feeling like the world was collapsing around me. Finally, I grabbed my keys, threw on my old leather jacket, and bolted out the door. It was pitch black outside, drizzling rain, the wind biting cold. Evergreen Elementary was a 3-hour drive away. I jumped into my beat-up pickup truck, started the engine, and tore off into the night. The farther I drove, the worse it felt. Headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating towering pine trees lining the highway. Nighttime Oregon is beautiful in a terrifying way, silent but full of secrets. I turned on the radio to calm myself, but the music only made me more anxious. Why was my phone number in some child's file, a child I'd never met? My heart hammered, each beat like a drum urging me forward. The rain grew heavier, windshield wipers squeaking. I pictured the little girl, 4 years old, waiting for her dad to pick her up. If this was a mistake, I'd explain it to the school. But what if it wasn't? What if something bigger was going on? The unease spread through me like a nightmare, slowly becoming real. I pressed harder on the gas, the truck roaring into the black night, and deep down I knew I was about to crash into a truth I'd never seen coming in my entire life. The highway finally spat me out onto the turnoff for the small suburban town, where Evergreen Elementary sat nestled among towering pines. Rain was still pouring, turning the road into a mirror of shimmering puddles under my headlights. I pulled up hastily in front of the school gate, killed the engine, and took a deep, shaky breath to steady myself. My heart was still racing, as if trying to warn me that something terrible was about to happen. I stepped out of the truck. My jacket was instantly soaked. Rain dripped from my hair onto my face. The school gate was half closed, only a single dim yellow light illuminating the entrance. I pushed through and walked down the dark hallway, the wet squeak of my boots echoing like whispers in a nightmare. The office was at the end of the corridor, light leaking from the crack beneath the door. I knocked lightly, then pushed it open without waiting for an answer. Inside, a middle-aged woman, clearly the teacher, sat behind a desk, looking exhausted but still professional. Next to her, on a chair too tall for her, sat a little girl whose feet dangled without touching the floor. The teacher stood up the moment she saw me, relief mixed with reproach in her voice. "Mr. Parker, you finally made it. We've been waiting over an hour. This is Alice, your daughter." I froze in the doorway, eyes locked on the child. The little girl lifted her head. Big round eyes regarded me warily. The instant our gazes met, the world seemed to stop. Her face. God, it was Ariana as a child. The same delicate, slightly upturned nose, the same small, pretty mouth, and especially those eyes. Warm brown with long, curled lashes, exactly like my little sister in the old childhood photos. My heart clenched. An icy shiver ran down my spine. This couldn't be coincidence. Ariana? Could it be? No. Impossible. She disappeared 4 years ago, and if she'd had a child, the timing would make the kid exactly 4 years old right now. Or, I shook my head, trying to push away the insane thought. Suspicion surged like a tidal wave. I stepped closer, voice trembling. Are you sure? I don't have a child. This has to be a mistake. Please show me her file. I need to verify this. The teacher raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She opened a drawer, pulled out a thin folder, and slid it across the desk. This is Alice's enrollment paperwork. We have complete parent information. You can look, but please don't waste any more of my time. Alice needs to go home. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. Name, Alice Parker. Age, 4. Birth date, exactly 9 months after the period when Ariana would have been pregnant. Then the parents section. Father, Adam Parker, my phone number listed. Mother, Ariana Parker. Attached was a faded photo, blurry but unmistakably my sister. Ariana with that sad smile and messy long hair. I nearly stopped breathing. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, like someone was squeezing my throat. Ariana. Was she still alive? And this child? My niece? The truth hit me like a punch to the face, making my head spin. Guilt, anger, and confusion crashed over me all at once, crushing my chest. Guilt for not searching for her long enough, for letting her vanish without doing more. Confusion. Why was my name listed as the father? Had Ariana used my identity to protect the child? I realized I was about to find my sister again after 4 years of silence. 4 years I'd lived with gnawing remorse, wondering where she was, how she was surviving. Now the truth stood right in front of me in the shape of a little girl. I signed the release form with numb fingers, then bent down and lifted Alice into my arms. She didn't resist. She just looked at me cautiously yet strangely. Something in her eyes flickered with a sense of safety, as if she somehow knew I was family. She walked beside me obediently as we left the school, her tiny hand gripping my finger. The teacher saw us to the door and reminded me not to be so late next time. I nodded mechanically, my mind still reeling. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the wind was still biting. I opened the truck door, placed Alice in the back seat, and wrapped an old blanket from the trunk around her. "Are you cold?" I asked as gently as I could. In the truck, she only said her name once, Alice Parker, in a tiny voice, then fell silent, clutching a tattered doll and staring out the window like she was used to shrinking away from the world. I tried to make conversation, asked about school, about Mommy, but she just shook her head, eyes fixed on the trees whipping past. My heart ached. What had this child been through? Why was she so quiet? I glanced at the file again and memorized the home address, a rundown apartment complex on the outskirts of Oregon, not far away. I immediately turned the truck in that direction, plunging back into the night, but this time with a small passenger who changed everything. As I drove, watching Alice's face in the rearview mirror opened the floodgates of memory from 4 years ago, rushing back like an unstoppable torrent. Every detail was vivid, like an old film playing in my head. Ariana had been a lively, innocent 22-year-old with a radiant smile. She'd followed me around like a shadow since we were kids. I remembered summer afternoons in Salem, the two of us running along the banks of the Willamette River, Ariana giggling when I taught her to fish. "Adam, you're my safest place in the whole world," she used to say, throwing her arms around me whenever she was scared. Ariana was the joy of our family, our little sister with long, shiny hair and sparkling eyes, always dreaming of a happy life. Then that innocence began to fade when she brought a man home to meet us, Ray Cross. He appeared like a strange wind, all warm smiles and sweet promises that even I half believed at first. Tall, well-dressed, worked for a nearby construction company. He talked about the future, about their dream house, and Ariana hung on every word. She looked happy, so I didn't interfere much. But soon the changes started. Ariana would come home with red-rimmed eyes, trembling, trying to hide her unease. She'd force a smile, say she was just tired from work, but I noticed the faint bruises on her arms, the way she dodged questions about Ray. Back then, I wasn't perceptive enough. I thought it was normal couples arguments. I never imagined it was the beginning of hell. Then the day Ariana told us she was pregnant, we were having family dinner when she suddenly set down her spoon, voice shaking. "Mom, Dad, Adam, I'm pregnant." Joy and fear mingled on her face, her eyes shining with hope. The family exploded. My father, Alberto Parker, a strict man obsessed with family honor, slammed the table and roared, "What have you done? Do you have any idea what that baby is? It's a disgrace. A stain on the Parker name." His face turned purple with rage. My mother, Delisa, just cried silently, hands clenched under the table. Ariana shrank into herself, trembling like a child, backed into a corner, tears streaming down her cheeks. Meanwhile, Ray started avoiding her right after that. Texts slowed, calls went unanswered, then he vanished completely as if he'd never existed. He abandoned her, leaving a gaping wound. I remember that final night under pouring rain. Ariana stood there, 5 months pregnant, shoulders shaking with sobs. Dad threw her out without a second chance. "Get out of this house and never come back. From this day forward, the Parker family has no daughter named Ariana," he bellowed, slamming the door. Ariana sobbed, clutching a single small suitcase. I ran after her into the rain, grabbing her hand, begging our parents to reconsider. "She's your daughter. She's my sister. No one deserves to be thrown out like this." But Dad turned his back coldly and Mom only cried without daring to speak. Ariana looked at me, eyes swollen. "Adam, thank you for being the only one who stood by me. But I have to go. Mom and Dad don't want me anymore." She walked away into the darkness, rain swallowing her fragile silhouette. I stood there, soaked and helpless. From that night on, Ariana disappeared from our lives. No calls, no messages, like she'd melted into the rain and been swallowed by an invisible world. I never found the courage to search thoroughly enough. I looked for her for a whole year, posted on social media, asked old friends, even hired a private investigator. But Oregon is vast, and she had simply vanished. For 4 years I lived with that guilt, blaming myself for not being strong enough. Every night I dreamed she was calling my name, begging for help, only to wake up alone. Now, looking at Alice, a child who was the spitting image of her, everything came slicing back like knives. Reality snapped back into focus, and I could never have imagined that today, everything I'd lost was returning in the cruelest way possible. Ariana, where was she? What had happened? My heart pounded harder as the truck turned into the rundown apartment complex. Crooked buildings appeared under the faint streetlights, and I knew the nightmare was only just beginning. My battered old pickup truck crawled slowly along the muddy dirt road, flanked by rows of cramped houses that looked like ghosts in the night. This slum sat on the ragged edge of Oregon's suburbs, a place the city lights never reached. Only flickering street lamps lit the way, casting weak glows over overflowing trash and cracked, stained concrete walls, the stench of open sewers mixed with the smell of wet earth after the rain. I glanced at Alice in the rearview mirror. She sat perfectly still, clutching her tattered doll, staring out the window with a heartbreaking familiarity. "Where's your house, Alice? Show me," I asked as gently as I could, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was pounding like war drums. She pointed ahead, her voice tiny. "Right there, mister. The one with the green door." Each meter we advanced made my heart beat harder, as if every inch dragged me deeper into hell. I had never imagined Ariana, my little sister who grew up in a proper house in Salem with a green lawn and warm family dinners, could ever live in a place like this. For 4 years I had pictured her somewhere far away, maybe struggling but rebuilding a life. Not this. Not a dangerous slum where dogs barked endlessly and shadowy figures lurked beneath broken streetlights. We stopped in front of a dilapidated shack, cracked walls, a rusted tin roof rattling in the wind. The front door hung ajar, unlocked, just a rotten plank leaning crookedly to one side, as if someone had kicked it in and never bothered to fix it. My chest tightened. This was home? This was where Ariana and Alice lived? I killed the engine and took a deep breath, but the icy air still clawed its way into my lungs. "Is this the one, sweetheart?" I asked Alice. She nodded, a flicker of worry in her eyes. I lifted her out of the truck. She clung tightly to my hand and we walked toward the door. Every step felt heavy, as though I were walking into a nightmare I didn't want to wake from. I pushed the door open. Instantly, a wave of damp, rotten cold hit me like a slap. The room was pitch black except for faint streetlight leaking through a broken window. I switched on my phone's flashlight and swept it around, filthy floor covered in dust and debris. Then my beam froze. A body lay sprawled on the dirty floor, tangled, matted hair. A familiar silhouette. God, no. Ariana. She lay motionless, face deathly pale, eyes closed. My heart stopped for a second, then hammered wildly. I stood rooted to the spot, unable to believe my eyes. Ariana, my sister, the one I'd searched for 4 years, was lying here in this wretched shack, looking like a lifeless shell. The soft patter of Alice's footsteps sounded beside me, followed by a choked sob that exploded like a gunshot. The little girl threw herself forward, knelt, and wrapped her arms around the unconscious woman, shaking her desperately. "Mommy! Mommy, wake up. Don't sleep anymore. I'm home." Her voice broke into heaving sobs, tears streaming down her cheeks as her tiny hands clutched her mother's shoulders. The sight stabbed straight through my heart. I dropped to my knees beside them, my trembling hand hovering near Ariana's nose, a faint, shallow breath. I quickly checked her pulse at the neck, weak, barely there. Her skin was ice cold, lips purple. Alice clung to her mother's legs, wailing. I pulled the child into my arms, trying to soothe her even as panic clawed at me. "Mommy's going to be okay. I'm taking her to the hospital right now." But when the flashlight beam swept across Ariana's body, I saw them. Bruises on her wrists, arms, legs. Old and new, mottled purple and yellow, the unmistakable marks of prolonged violence. Each one cut into me like a blade, sending chills through my entire body. Who did this? Ray? Had that bastard come back and done this to her? I remembered the faint bruises 4 years ago that she tried to hide, and I hated myself for not seeing the truth sooner. My little sister, once so strong and bright, now lay broken like a discarded doll, too exhausted and beaten to fight anymore. I scanned the room to take stock. The fridge stood wide open, completely empty except for a few scattered beer cans. The stove was cold and dusty, unused for days. Shattered liquor bottles glittered on the floor, furniture overturned, a snapped table, a toppled chair, clothes strewn everywhere, as if a violent struggle had taken place. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a home. This was hell. Ariana had lived like this for 4 years, with a small child, completely alone. I pictured her shielding Alice from flying fists, and tears burned my eyes. Why didn't she call me? Why didn't she come back? Guilt and rage surged together, but there was no time for questions. She needed help now. I scooped Ariana into my arms. Her body was terrifyingly light, wasted away, more like a child than an adult. Her skin felt paper-thin, bones sharp beneath the threadbare clothes. Alice followed, sobbing and clutching her ragged doll, eyes red and fixed on her mother. "Mommy's going to be okay, I promise," I whispered, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. We rushed back into the freezing night. I laid Ariana across the back seat, wrapped my leather jacket tightly around her to keep her warm, then slammed the door. Alice climbed in beside her mother, stroking her hair and crying softly. I jumped behind the wheel, started the engine, and tore off into the darkness. The suburban streets were deserted, only distant sirens and the returning rain for company. I floored it, tires skidding on muddy roads, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. All I could hear was the faint, ragged breathing behind me, Ariana's fragile gasps like a whispered plea for help, and Alice's broken sobs, trying so hard to stay quiet but failing in waves, as if every second brought us closer to tragedy. I glanced in the mirror. Alice curled against her mother, face buried in Ariana's shoulder. The sight tore me apart. "I'm getting Mommy to the hospital right now, Alice. She'll be okay. Just hang on, I'm here," I said, voice shaking. But dark thoughts flooded in. What if I was too late? What if she didn't make it? What had she endured alone all these years? I remembered that rainy night she left, pregnant, heartbroken, and how helpless I'd been. Now fate was giving me a chance to make it right, but in the cruelest way possible. The road to the hospital felt endless. I raced through dark neighborhoods, headlights slicing the night, briefly illuminating huddled homeless figures on the sidewalks. Rain hammered harder, wipers screeching in rhythm with Alice's crying. Finally, the flickering neon sign appeared. Oregon Community Hospital, an old building but our only hope. I screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance, scooped Ariana into my arms, still unconscious, and ran. Alice sprinted behind me, clutching the hem of my jacket. I burst through the bright, cold corridor, the smell of disinfectant hitting me like a wall. "Please help my sister. She's unconscious," I shouted at the medical staff. They rushed over with a gurney, laid Ariana on it, and wheeled her into the trauma room. "Sir, please stay calm and wait out here," a nurse said, professional but distant. I stood outside the doors, watching through the frosted glass as they hooked up IVs and monitors. My chest felt crushed. I held Alice close. She pressed against me, crying quietly. Through the glass, I could see Ariana lying there, fragile under the harsh white lights, and all I could think of was the darkness she'd endured alone for 4 years. Pregnant and abandoned, giving birth in poverty, then beaten by that monster. Why didn't she call me? Why did she suffer in silence? Tears rolled down my face, mixing with sweat. Alice whispered, "Mister, will Mommy wake up?" I hugged her tighter. "Of course, sweetheart. Your mom is so much stronger than you know." But inside I was terrified. This nightmare wasn't over, it had only just begun. I sat in the hallway, time crawling like torture, my mind spinning with memories and fear. Ariana, my little sister, was finally found, but in the worst possible state. I would never let her suffer again. Never. The hospital corridor was icy cold, thick with the sharp smell of disinfectant and the endless beeping of machines echoing from nearby rooms. Alice had finally fallen asleep in my arms, still clutching her ragged doll, her small face pale with exhaustion. I glanced at the wall clock. More than an hour had passed since they wheeled Ariana into the emergency room. Every minute dragged like a boulder, crushing my chest. At last, the doors swung open. A middle-aged doctor stepped out, face grave, tired eyes half hidden behind black-rimmed glasses. My heart clenched so hard I thought it might stop. I shot to my feet. Alice stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Are you the brother of patient Ariana Parker?" the doctor asked, his calm voice heavy with meaning. I nodded, mouth dry, unable to speak. He sighed and flipped through the chart in his hand. "She's out of immediate danger. We've stabilized her heart rate and started IV fluids. But her condition is serious. Examinations show multiple external injuries from blunt force trauma. Old fractures that never healed properly, widespread bruising. These are classic signs of prolonged domestic abuse, likely spanning years." He looked straight at me. The bruises on her body indicate repeated long-term violence, not a one-time incident. It felt like someone had punched me in the face. Long-term abuse? Ariana, the girl who used to laugh without a care in the world, had been beaten like this? Blood rushed to my head. My ears rang. My heart felt ready to explode. The doctor continued, voice steady. "Additionally, she is severely malnourished, critical vitamin and calorie deficiency, pneumonia from living in damp, moldy conditions, chronic sleep deprivation, likely from prolonged stress and insomnia. She'll need inpatient treatment for days, possibly weeks, to avoid complications like respiratory failure or widespread infection. We'll monitor her closely." I nodded mechanically, head spinning. Malnutrition, pneumonia, years of beatings. How had she survived it all? I signed every admission form with shaking hands, agreeing to cover the costs even though my bank account from the garage barely kept me afloat. I'd sell the truck if I had to. The doctor rested a hand on my shoulder. "You got her here just in time. Let her rest now." I followed him to the recovery room, Alice holding my hand, her little feet pattering beside me. The long hallway stretched under harsh fluorescent lights that made everything feel surreal. My mind swung between horror at what she'd endured and relief that she was still alive. Inside the room, the silence was suffocating. Ariana lay in the hospital bed, pale against the white sheets, eyes glassy and fixed on the ceiling. Monitors beeped steadily, IV lines dangled beside her. She looked smaller than ever, like a lost child. Alice let out a happy cry and ran to the bed. Ariana turned her head slowly. When she saw me, her eyes widened in shock. My name escaped her lips in a weak, raspy whisper as if rising from the bottom of a pit. Then her eyes filled with shame and pain, tears rolled down her pallid cheeks. I rushed to her side and pulled her into my arms, feeling the tremor in her frail body. She gripped my hand desperately and sobbed into my chest, the sound raw and broken like a dam finally bursting. "Adam, how did you find me? I'm so sorry," she kept repeating between gasps. I stroked her hair, fighting my own tears. "Don't say anything. Just rest, Ariana. I'm here now. Everything's going to be okay." Alice climbed onto the bed and curled against her mother. The three of us held each other in silence, broken only by crying and the steady beeping of machines. Ariana cried herself into exhaustion and fell asleep in my arms, leaving behind a pain that sank into my bones, an old wound ripped open until I could barely breathe. For 4 years she had lived in hell while I lived with guilt, never knowing. From that day on, I took leave from the garage. My boss agreed the moment he heard. I stayed by her bedside, caring for her as the only family she had left. Every morning I bought nutritious porridge from the diner near the hospital and fed her spoonful by spoonful, telling silly stories from our childhood to make her smile. Alice played quietly in the waiting area chairs, coloring with the new crayons I'd bought, while we waited outside whenever the nurses changed Ariana's dressings or bathed her. The hallway was quiet except for the steady beeping drifting from her room. When the nurse finally opened the door, I took Alice's hand and walked in. Ariana looked cleaner, her hair brushed, her skin less ashen. I sat beside her and took her cold hand. She squeezed back weakly. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered, a promise I would never break. She blinked up at me, eyes shining with tears. I thought I was going to die in that room. And Alice. Those words cut through me like ice. Eventually, I decided to call our parents. I didn't expect much, but they were still her parents. They had to know. I dialed the house in Salem, hand trembling. Mom answered, voice weary. "Adam? What is it, son?" I told her briefly. "Mom, I found Ariana. She's in the hospital. It's bad. Abuse, malnutrition." Silence. Then Dad snatched the phone, voice cold and cutting. "She's still alive? I thought she was dead by now." My heart stopped. No grief, no questions, just contempt. She brought it all on herself. Got pregnant out of wedlock, ran off with that trash. Getting beaten is just the price she pays. Don't expect pity. Someone like her doesn't deserve help. I stood frozen. "Dad, she's your daughter. She was nearly killed." He cut me off. "Don't drag me into this. She made her mess. She can lie in it. I won't be tied to any more of her trouble. Family honor matters more than her life, understand? And you, stay out of it. Don't pull your mother and me into the sewer she created." They refused to visit, claiming they were busy, afraid of what the neighbors might say. Mom only cried silently on the line, too scared to speak. I hung up, shaking with shock and rage. The people who brought us into the world had turned their backs again, but that shock quickly hardened into resolve. It fueled my determination to protect Ariana where our own parents had failed. From now on, I was her family. Only me. A few days later, as her strength slowly returned, she could eat more, color returned to her cheeks. She began telling me about the missing years. We sat by her bed, Alice asleep beside her, and Ariana whispered as if afraid someone might hear. After that night, I just drifted, Adam. Worked odd jobs, waitressing, washing dishes in bars, sleeping in cheap motels. I gave birth to Alice alone in a tiny clinic. I named her Alice Parker and put your phone number as the emergency contact, because you were the only person I still trusted. My heart broke all over again. She told me Ray had come back after a year. He found me in the slums, said he regretted abandoning me, that he wanted to be a father to Alice. I was weak. I thought of her future. But then life turned into hell. His drinking, his rages with no warning, fists flying whenever he was drunk. She described nights of terror. Furniture smashed, her hair yanked as he dragged her across the floor, blows to her stomach, her face. I tried to shield Alice, but she saw everything. She'd shake with fear. A year ago, Ray left for good with another woman, but he still showed up now and then demanding money she earned scrubbing floors. If she didn't have it, new bruises appeared. She never called the police. Terrified of retaliation, she stopped, tears streaming. The day you came, he showed up out of nowhere. We fought. He wanted money. I said I had none. He beat me until I passed out and left me on the floor. If you hadn't come, Alice and I... She couldn't finish, just sobbed. I sat stunned, rage boiling inside me like fire. Ray, that monster had to pay. Beneath the fury was an ocean of grief for everything Ariana had suffered alone in the dark for 4 long years. The girl who once dreamed of happiness had lived like a ghost, enduring in silence so she wouldn't burden us. I held her tighter. He will never touch you again. I swear it. But inside, a storm was rising. The horrible truth was out, and I knew the road ahead would be brutal. The following days in the hospital passed in weary but hopeful waiting. Ariana recovered little by little. Her skin regained some color, her eyes cleared, and she began to smile more often as she watched Alice play beside the bed. I was there every single day, bringing homemade food from my tiny apartment. Steaming chicken porridge, fresh fruit, and the little pastries she had loved since childhood. Alice stayed glued to her mother, drawing colorful pictures and chattering about school in her bright, bird-like voice. Yet every night, when I returned home alone, I lay awake, Ariana's words replaying in my head. Ray, the man who had not only abandoned her but had come back to torment her. I clenched my fists until my knuckles went white, wondering why life had been so cruel to my little sister. I had to do something. I couldn't let it end like this. Finally, after 2 weeks, the doctors discharged her. She was much better. She could walk on her own, eat normally, though still weak and in need of follow-up care. That day, the Oregon sky was for once bright with rare sunshine. Golden light poured through the hospital windows like a good omen. I wheeled her out while Alice skipped excitedly beside us, clutching a handful of wildflowers I'd picked along the road. But as the truck headed toward the slum, my chest tightened. I couldn't let her go back to that hellhole full of deprivation, danger, and nightmares. I stopped the truck just outside the hospital gate and turned to her, voice firm. Ariana, listen to me. You and Alice are not going back there. Ever. Come live with me. There's room for both of you. You won't have to worry about a thing. She looked at me, eyes uncertain. She bit her lip, fingers twisting the thin hospital gown. Adam, I don't want to be a burden. I've caused enough trouble already. That apartment, it's been our home, however temporary. Her voice trembled with shame. I saw the fear in her eyes, fear of being rejected again, fear of depending on someone. But I didn't back down. I told her about my place. Small but clean, safe, with a little backyard where Alice could play. You're my sister, Ariana. Alice is my niece. I can't let you two live in a place with no lock on the door and trash everywhere. Let me take care of you. I'm begging you. I looked at her, eyes brimming, and after a long hesitation, she finally nodded. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for not abandoning me. The three of us collected the few belongings they had from the slum, a couple of worn outfits, Alice's tattered doll, a handful of personal items, and left that place forever. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and watched the crooked buildings disappear, a huge weight lifting from my chest. Back at my little apartment on the outskirts of Portland, the place suddenly felt warm in a way it never had before. I gave them the bedroom. A real bed, clean sheets, a soft golden nightlight. I made up a bed for myself on the old living room sofa and slept like a king, knowing they were finally safe under my roof. Ariana rested while Alice explored every corner with delighted squeals. I cooked our first dinner together, spaghetti with meat sauce, her childhood favorite. The smell of food filled the air. Alice's laughter echoed through the rooms, and for the first time, my apartment no longer felt lonely. Thank you, Adam, Ariana whispered as we ate. I never thought I'd have a day like this again. I smiled, but deep down the worry lingered. Ray was still out there, and he could show up any time. In the days that followed, life for the three of us slowly settled into a rhythm. Ariana improved visibly. She ate heartily, slept deeply, and started helping around the house. She laughed more, told funny stories about Alice, and we stayed up late watching movies like we did when we were kids. Alice attached herself to me as if I were her new anchor. She called me Uncle Adam, followed me everywhere, and even fell asleep on my shoulder while I read her bedtime stories. I took her to the nearby park, pushed her on the swings, taught her to fish in the little stream, and suddenly my life had meaning again. Mornings began with the smell of fresh coffee. Ariana sat at the kitchen table talking about old dreams while Alice drew pictures of the three of us as a family. That peace made me forget my fears, but I knew deep down it was fragile as glass. And the peace didn't last long. One evening after work, the Oregon sky already dark, rain drizzling softly. I pulled up to the apartment exhausted from a long day at the garage, looking forward to dinner with Ariana and Alice. But the moment I parked, my heart stopped. Crashing and banging came from the front door, mixed with a guttural, animal-like roar. "Open the damn door!" I know you're hiding in there. Ariana, you bitch, get out here. I leapt from the truck, blood rushing to my head. Ray, he was pounding and kicking the door like a madman, his huge frame looming under the streetlight, face crimson with drunken rage. Through the window, I saw Ariana clutching Alice, both of them trembling. Ariana's voice cracked with terror as she begged him to leave them alone. Ray, please go. Just leave us in peace. I didn't think. I charged forward and shoved him away from the door with all my strength, sending him sprawling. I planted myself between him and my family, every muscle taut, fists clenched. Who the hell are you? He snarled, scrambling to his feet, eyes bloodshot, ready to lunge. But something in my cold, unwavering stare made him hesitate. I was taller, broader, and the murderous look in my eyes must have been unmistakable. He stayed on the sidewalk, spitting venom instead of swinging. You're the brother, right? You think you can steal my woman and my kid? Give them back. Or I swear I'll come back, and you know what'll happen. I'll burn this whole place down and kill every last one of you. Adrenaline surged through me. My limbs shook, but I didn't step back. I locked eyes with him, voice low and icy. Touch them again and I won't let you walk away alive. Get out of here right now, or I'm calling the cops. The word cops made him pause. He hurled a few more filthy threats, promised he wasn't finished, then staggered off into the darkness. I stood there, breathing hard, watching until he vanished completely before daring to turn back to the house. Ariana flung the door open and threw herself into my arms, shaking uncontrollably. Alice hid behind her, eyes red with tears. I held them both, feeling their fear in my arms, trying to calm them even though my own blood was still boiling with rage and terror. He's gone. I'm here. You're safe. But inside, dread spread like ice. He knew where we lived and he would come back. Once Ariana calmed down, we sat around the kitchen table with cups of hot tea. Alice had finally fallen asleep after the ordeal. Ariana sat curled up, eyes swollen. I knew silence would only make things worse. Ray wouldn't stop and we couldn't live in fear forever. I spoke with quiet determination. Ariana, we have to put him in front of the law. I'll gather evidence. Hospital records, photos, security footage, if we can get it. He has to pay for what he did to you. She hesitated, terror flashing in her eyes. Adam, he really will come back for revenge. You've seen what he's capable of. He's not normal. I'm so scared. She told me again about the times he'd threatened to kill her if she ever went to the police. But my resolve, the fresh memory of his violence, and most of all the realization that she no longer had to face him alone finally won out. She nodded. We held each other tight, and in that moment I knew. The real fight had only just begun. The next morning, the Oregon sky hung low and gray, heavy with clouds, as if foretelling a long, difficult day. I woke early, brewed 2 strong black coffees, and sat at the kitchen table watching Ariana. She looked exhausted, her eyes still red from the night before, but a flicker of resolve shone through when she nodded. Adam, let's start gathering the evidence, she said, her voice soft yet steady. Alice was still fast asleep, so we asked the kind old lady downstairs, the same neighbor who had seen Ray the previous night and shaken her head in pity, to watch her for a few hours. We climbed into my old pickup and headed toward the old slum apartment. Just the thought of it made my chest tighten. The morning streets were nearly empty, only the soft patter of rain against the windshield and a heavy silence inside the cab. I reached over and squeezed Ariana's hand. We'll be quick. I'm right here. Nothing's going to happen to you. Turning into the slum brought everything rushing back like an old nightmare. Crooked buildings pressed together, trash piled high, the stench of mold mixed with cheap cigarette smoke. We parked a safe distance from the old place, trying not to draw attention. Ariana led the way, her steps shaky as she pointed out the neighbors' doors. At first they were wary. Suspicious glances through cracked doors, quick shakes of the head. I don't want to get involved, an old man muttered, eyes darting around as if Ray might leap from the shadows. I understood. Ray was the local terror, a huge drunken brute with iron fists. But when I explained calmly yet earnestly, We're putting him away for good. He won't hurt anyone again. Please, just tell us what you saw." A few began to open up. They led us into their cramped rooms and spoke in whispers as though he might hear. A middle-aged woman 2 houses down described the nights Ray brought other women home. Young, drunk girls laughing loudly at all hours. "He didn't even try to hide it," she said angrily. Ariana was alone with the little girl while he dragged those women in and smashed everything. I heard her screaming, heard the child crying. My heart twisted, imagining Ariana curled in a corner, shielding Alice. A plumber who lived nearby told of the times Ray, blackout drunk, punched through windows and hurled bottles against walls, the crash of glass echoing through the whole block. He was like a wild animal. Ariana would run out crying, face swollen. I wanted to help, but I was afraid he'd come after me. Every story was another piece of the hell Ariana had lived in. I wrote it all down carefully, my hand trembling with rage. Then came Maria, the thin, white-haired woman who lived right next door. Her hands shook as she clasped them together, voice breaking with emotion. She told us about one freezing night when Ray had shoved Ariana, heavily pregnant with Alice, out the door. Ariana collapsed onto the icy concrete, blood pooling beneath her. Maria had quietly opened her door and pulled Ariana inside for a few hours while Ray raged outside, drunk and screaming before finally leaving. Ariana had sobbed uncontrollably, begging Maria never to tell anyone, terrified that if Ray found out he would kill her. Maria took Ariana's hand now. "I can't watch you suffer anymore. I've seen too much. This time I will testify." The image of my once strong sister living in constant terror crushed me. I recorded every statement, collected shaky signatures, and saved the audio from my phone to strengthen the case. Each signature felt like progress, but the tension was thick. Everyone kept glancing over their shoulders. Leaving the slum, we drove to the small suburban hospital where Ariana had been treated so many times. The head doctor, an older man with silver hair, recognized her immediately. "Little one, you finally came back," he said, voice full of sorrow. We requested all her old medical records, the times she came in for falls downstairs, kitchen accidents, the excuses the doctors had always suspectedly doubted. "I knew it was abuse," he whispered as he handed over the thick file. "But she wouldn't talk. Now do what needs to be done. Take him to court." The folder was heavy with photos of bruises, x-rays of healed fractures, nurses' notes full of suspicion. Each page was another knife to the heart, reminding me of the nights she suffered alone. Ariana stared at the floor, tears falling. "I was so scared he'd kill me if I spoke at him." On the way home, we stopped at a roadside cafe to organize everything. I spread the documents across the table, hands shaking as I sorted. We added threatening texts from Ariana's old phone. "If you don't send money, I'll kill you and the kid." Constant demands for cash, loans taken out in her name, thousands of dollars of debt with her trembling signature. And the security footage from my apartment building. Grainy images of Ray pounding on the door the night before, screaming, then being shoved back by me. Everything was compiled into a thick, airtight case proving years of physical and psychological abuse. I made copies, locked the originals in a safe bag, and felt a mix of relief and dread. "We have enough, Ariana. He's not getting away this time." She gave a weak smile, but fear still lingered in her eyes. Yet just when it felt like we were gaining ground, a blow came out of nowhere. My parents, Alberto and Delisa, showed up unannounced. It was late afternoon, rain pouring hard, thunder rumbling like a warning. I had just gotten home from work and was wiping down the truck in the garage when frantic knocking started at the door. I opened it and froze. Dad stood there, face purple with rage, Mom behind him, eyes red from crying. "Open the damn door, Adam," Dad roared, pushing past me without waiting. The moment he saw Ariana and Alice in the living room, he exploded. "You filthy thing! What are you doing back here? I thought you died in some ditch." His words were venomous, cutting like blades. Ariana shrank back instantly, arms wrapped protectively around Alice. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks, but she pressed her lips together, unable to speak. I stepped in front of them, voice shaking with fury. "Dad, stop it. She's your daughter." He wouldn't listen. Mom, trembling, finally explained. "We've been getting threatening letters from that Ray, Adam. Anonymous notes demanding we force Ariana back to him, or he'll hurt the whole family." My stomach dropped. "Ray had gone after our parents?" Mom continued, tears falling. "At night we hear knocking, but no one's there. Sometimes we see a figure lurking across the street like a ghost. We're terrified, Adam. Terrified he'll really do it." They hadn't called the police, too afraid of neighborhood gossip and damage to reputation. Dad was a respected engineer in Salem, Mom a retired teacher. Family honor always came first. But the harassment had worn them down. Dad couldn't sleep, Mom cried all night. Alberto lost control, jabbing a finger at Ariana. "You're bad luck. You come back and bring disaster, ruining my life. I threw you out once. Why are you here again?" His cruel words made Ariana curl into herself, clutching Alice and shaking with silent sobs, just like the night she was kicked out 4 years ago. Alice began crying too, clinging to her mother, and the sight shattered me. Dad turned on me, eyes blazing. "Adam, send her back where she belongs. Or I'll disown you too. Consider yourself no son of mine." The threat hit like lightning. My own parents, choosing honor over their daughter's life again. I stood firm, body shielding Ariana. "No, Dad. She stays with me. If you won't help, then please leave. I will protect her." They grew even angrier. Dad slammed his fist into the wall. Mom begged him to calm down through her tears, then they stormed out, slamming the door behind them like a final severance. The instant the door shut, Ariana collapsed against my chest, sobbing uncontrollably, her whole body trembling like a leaf in autumn. I held her tight, stroking her hair, whispering, "Don't cry anymore. Look at me. From now on, you and Alice will never have to face this alone. I am your family. I will protect you no matter what it takes." At that moment, I was the only warmth left to shield her from the world, and from the very family that should have protected her. Tears rolled down my own face, mixed with rage. Ray had extended his terror even to our parents, and he would pay. The evidence file sat thick and damning on the table. The fight was about to reach its peak. But with Ariana in my arms, I was ready to face it all. That night, I lay awake on the living room sofa, my father's words echoing in my head like a reopened wound. "I'll disown you too." The pain was sharp, but it only hardened my resolve. My parents had chosen fake honor over their own children, and I would never let Ariana suffer again because of that choice. The next morning, the Oregon sky was still gray, rain drumming steadily on the roof. I packed the evidence into an old leather folder. Witness statements, recordings, photographs, threatening texts, everything a ticking time bomb. Ariana was already up, eyes swollen but steady. When I said, "Today we file with the police. No more delays," she nodded without hesitation. Alice was still sleeping, lost in her innocent dreams. I kissed her forehead before we left and silently promised I would keep the darkness that had haunted her mother far away from her. We drove to the Portland Police Bureau downtown, a grim gray building flanked by patrol cars. My heart pounded as we stepped inside. The air was cold, smelling of stale coffee and damp paper. At the front desk, I kept my voice steady. "I'm here to file a domestic violence report." They led us to an interview room where a middle-aged detective named Harris sat behind a desk buried in files. He glanced at us with the weary eyes of someone who sees tragedy every day. I slid the thick folder across to him and summarized, "My sister has been abused for 4 years by Ray Cross. This is the evidence: neighbor statements, medical records, threatening messages, security footage." Ariana sat beside me, knuckles white as she clutched her coat, face paling at the sound of his name. Harris flipped through the pages. His eyes widened with every turn. The sheer volume, signed statements, photos of bruises, audio of screams, hospital reports, made him nod immediately. "This is serious," he said gravely. "We're opening a case right now. Miss Parker, we'll start victim protection procedures, a temporary restraining order, and if needed, a safe house. Ariana exhaled, tears rolling down her cheeks. A wave of relief mixed with lingering fear washed over me. Harris called in colleagues, made copies of everything, and promised they would bring Ray in for questioning the very next day. We left the station in a light drizzle, hands tightly clasped, but I knew this was only the beginning. Ray would not go quietly, he would hit back. He did. The next day he was summoned to the station. I wasn't there, but Harris called afterward. Ray had shown up reeking of alcohol, wearing an old leather jacket, belligerent from the start. When questioned about Ariana's injuries, he snarled, "Accidents! That bitch fell on her own." He tried to turn the tables, claiming she was the violent one, that she cheated, that she drank, anything to muddy the investigation. The police weren't fooled. The evidence was overwhelming, and his aggression only proved his guilt. Harris said Ray nearly lunged at an officer and had to be restrained. "He's panicking," Harris told me over the phone. "We're fast-tracking this." Unable to intimidate the police, Ray switched to dirtier tactics. A few days later, while checking social media, a new habit to monitor him, I saw the poison spreading. He had posted long, vicious rants on Facebook and Twitter accusing Ariana of sleeping around and calling me the perverted brother who seduced and stole his wife and child. Ariana is a whore. Adam Parker is a homewrecker. He attached old photos of her, doctored to make her look depraved. My blood boiled as I scrolled, my hands shook with rage. Public reaction split instantly. Some supported him and left vile comments. Typical trashy woman. Others doubted the story, but the damage spread like wildfire. Tabloid sites, cheap gossip pages hungry for scandal, republished everything with screaming headlines. Brother steals sister-in-law, Oregon family drama explodes. My name and photo were everywhere, painting me as the villain who destroyed another man's family. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Old friends asking questions, co-workers at the garage giving strange looks. It felt like knives in my chest. My parents were hit hard too. In Salem, the rumors reached the neighbors. Gossip traveled from social media to the grocery store. They called one evening, Dad roaring through the speaker, "You've dragged disaster on this family." Neighbors won't stop talking. I'm ashamed to show my face. Why didn't you just let that bitch fend for herself? Mom sobbed in the background. Adam, we can't take any more. First the threatening letters, now this. Do you see what you've done? I tried to explain it was all Ray's smear campaign, but Dad cut me off with more insults and hung up. The betrayal stung like salt in an open wound. Instead of supporting us, they blamed me for bringing trouble home. Those calls kept me awake, but I ignored them and focused only on protecting Ariana and preparing for trial. The more we were attacked, the more determined I became to drag Ray into the light. The police finished the case file quickly. The evidence was ironclad and sent it to the prosecutor. Trial was set just 2 months later. Ray, desperate, hired a cheap lawyer known for defending petty criminals. Harris said Ray kept calling the station with threats to sue. It was pointless. In the meantime, we lived on a knife's edge. Ariana rarely left the apartment, afraid of being recognized from the rumors. Alice asked about the bad man, her name for Ray, and I distracted her with happy stories. I added extra locks, checked the security cameras every night, and jumped at every strange sound. One anonymous letter slipped under the door, Ray's handwriting. "You and your brother will regret this." Ariana cried all night. I immediately called Harris and added it to the file. Tension built like a ticking bomb. The trial would be the final battle. The day finally arrived under a rare golden Oregon sun, as if the sky itself wished us luck. The old courthouse downtown stood solemn with its stone columns, but inside the air was heavy with old wood and paper. I sat beside Ariana and Alice in the plaintiff's section, holding her hand tight. Ariana wore a simple dress, pale but resolute. Across the aisle, Ray sat with his lawyer, trying to look calm. Clean shirt, combed hair, but his eyes darted nervously and burned with hatred whenever they landed on us. My heart pounded as the judge banged the gavel and the trial began. The prosecutor, a sharp middle-aged woman, laid out the charges. Defendant Ray Cross is accused of prolonged domestic violence causing injury, death threats, extortion, and disorderly conduct. When my turn came, I stood, voice trembling but firm, and presented every piece of evidence. Neighbor testimonies recounting screams and destruction. Hospital records with photos of bruises and x-rays of broken bones. The judge raised an eyebrow. Threatening texts projected on screen. "I'll kill you if you go to the police." Security footage of Ray pounding on my door. Loan documents proving years of financial coercion. Each item landed like a hammer blow. The courtroom fell silent except for shocked whispers from the gallery. Faced with irrefutable proof, Ray's excuses only exposed his lies and cruelty. He took the stand and whined, "I loved Ariana. She hurt herself and framed me." His lawyer tried to call it a family misunderstanding, but crumbled under the prosecutor's cross-examination. The judge shook his head. Ray began to sweat, eyes wild. After 3 tense hours, the verdict came. The judge adjusted his glasses and read aloud. Defendant Ray Cross is found guilty on all counts of domestic violence causing injury, death threats, extortion, and disorderly conduct. Sentence: 10 years imprisonment and a permanent restraining order prohibiting any contact with victims Ariana Parker and Alice Parker. The gavel slammed down. The room erupted in murmurs. Ray screamed, "No! You're framing me," as handcuffs clicked onto his wrists. He was dragged away, turning one last time to glare at us with pure hatred. Ariana exhaled, shoulders shaking with relief and sobs. I simply held my sister's hand, tears rolling down my own face. 4 years of hell were finally over. We walked out of the courthouse into the warm afternoon light. No more screams, no more threats. Only the fragile peace we had fought so hard for after 4 endless years. A gentle Oregon breeze carried the scent of autumn leaves, and for the first time, Ariana truly smiled. "Thank you, Adam, for everything. Without you, I don't know what would have happened to us," she whispered. I pulled her and Alice into my arms, heart full of hope. The wounds would take time to heal, and a new journey was just beginning. But we had won. Not with fists, but with truth and love. The days immediately following the trial felt like turning to a new chapter, though the aftershocks still smoldered. Local media covered the case extensively. Long articles in the Oregonian and on regional news channels carried sensational headlines like "Brave Brother Saves Sister from Years of Domestic Hell" or "Shocking Case, Abuser Sentenced to 10 Years." For the first time, I felt true relief. The truth had been completely vindicated. Ariana received hundreds of supportive messages from strangers on social media. Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. People sent words of encouragement and solidarity. She read them with tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy this time. Those messages gave her the faith to start over. She began sleeping through the night, eating properly, and the light slowly returned to her eyes. Alice felt the change, too. She ran around the apartment laughing, playing with the new doll I'd bought her, chattering excitedly about school and what tomorrow would be like with a sparkle I'd never seen before. Together we cleaned the apartment, painted the walls a soft sky blue to chase away old memories, and every evening the 3 of us gathered to tell silly stories, finally feeling like a real family. Meanwhile, our parents became the target of public condemnation. The news spread, and everyone learned how they had thrown Ariana out years ago, refused to help when she was in the hospital, and even hurled insults when they showed up at my door. Relatives distanced themselves. Phone calls from aunts and uncles dwindled, then stopped entirely. Neighbors in Salem turned away, whispering behind their backs, "What kind of parents treat their own child like that?" Society shunned them for the cruelty they had shown their daughter. Once proud of their reputation, Dad with his stable engineering career, Mom with her gentle retired teacher image, they now lived in seclusion, afraid to leave the house because of the scornful looks from others. A distant relative told me Dad had grown quiet, Mom often cried alone, and the once warm home had become a prison. It hurt my heart, but I felt no regret. They had chosen that path and now had to live with the consequences. I started over with a new job. Using the small savings I'd scraped together over the years, I opened a modest electronics repair shop on the outskirts of Portland. It was just a rented garage with a glowing neon sign that read Parker Repairs. But it was my dream. I worked tirelessly to build a future for the three of us, fixing laptops, phones, and computers for local customers from dawn until late at night. Ariana supported me wholeheartedly. "You're going to make it, I believe in you." She helped clean the shop in the early days, and our very first customer, an elderly lady with an old computer, smiled and said, "You're that kind young man from the news, the hero." Every dollar earned went toward Alice's education, Ariana's fresh start, and the dream of one day buying a bigger house. Ariana found part-time work at a cozy neighborhood cafe filled with the smell of freshly ground coffee and toasted bread. She started on morning shifts, making lattes and chatting with customers, slowly rebuilding an independent life. When she received her first paycheck, she beamed. "Adam, I feel alive again." Alice couldn't wait to go to school each day, the colorful elementary school nearby, full of new friends. Her innocent smile returned. She came home chattering, "Today I drew Uncle Adam fixing a car." We took turns dropping her off and picking her up, and in the afternoons the three of us cooked together. Spaghetti, fresh salads, homemade cakes. Life settled into a calm, hopeful rhythm. We built a new home where there were no more screams, no more fists, no more fear hanging over us. Every night I listened to the steady breathing of Ariana and Alice from the bedroom, and an unfamiliar peace filled my heart. A year passed in the blink of an eye, yet it was filled with small, meaningful changes. The shop grew busier, from cracked phone screens to home security installations. I hired an assistant, and the income finally allowed us to move into a slightly larger house with a green backyard where Alice could run free. Ariana was promoted to afternoon shift manager at the cafe and started taking online business management courses, dreaming of one day owning her own place. Alice shot up. Now 5 years old, she was doing well in school, making friends, and no longer flinched at loud noises. We celebrated the little things. Alice's birthday with cake and balloons, Christmas with a tree we decorated ourselves, weekend picnics by the Willamette River where we used to play as kids. Memories of Ray faded like a distant nightmare, and we learned to live without looking over our shoulders. Then, on a crisp autumn afternoon with golden leaves covering the yard, Deliza, our mother, suddenly appeared at the door. I was working on a car in the garage, Ariana was making coffee in the kitchen, and Alice was playing outside when a soft knock sounded. I opened the door and froze. Mom stood there, thinner than before, eyes shadowed from sleepless nights, her face etched with deep regret and new wrinkles. She wore an old coat, clutching her purse tightly, looking like a ghost from the past. "Adam, I need to talk," she whispered, voice trembling. My chest tightened. After years of silence and harsh words, she was here now. I let her in. Ariana stepped out of the kitchen and stopped dead when she saw her. Mom's gaze fell on Ariana and Alice. Her legs seemed to buckle. Her eyes filled with guilt and tears spilled over uncontrollably. She tried to speak, voice breaking. "Ariana, my daughter, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I want my granddaughter back. I want to make it right." She sank to her knees beside Alice, reaching out with trembling hands to touch her hair. But Alice shrank behind Ariana, eyes wide with fear. Ariana stood frozen, hands clenched on her sweater, the memories flooding back. The rainy night she was thrown out, the cruel words, the years of loneliness. She could only cry, unable to speak, still too wounded to open her heart. Tears streamed down her face, shoulders shaking. Alice clung to her mother and cried too. I stayed silent the whole time, watching Mom with a mixture of pain and cold detachment. This was the woman who gave us life, yet turned away when we needed her most. When she pleaded, "Adam, please convince Ariana for me. I regret abandoning her," I finally spoke, calm but cutting. "Mom, When we needed you and Dad the most, when Ariana was pregnant, when she was being beaten, when I called begging for help, you chose to turn your backs. Now that everything is finally okay, you come asking for forgiveness? That apology is too late. The words struck like a blade. Mom staggered, clutching her chest, tears pouring down. You're right. I was wrong. But I can't bear it anymore. Your father regrets it too, but he's too ashamed to come. She bowed her head and left, walking away with the heavy steps of someone carrying a lifetime of guilt. The door closed behind her, leaving a heavy silence. Ariana collapsed into a chair, cradling Alice, shoulders trembling. I knelt beside her, resting a gentle hand on her back. Are you okay? I asked softly. She nodded through her tears. I'm not ready to forgive yet, Adam, but I don't hate her anymore. I understood. Healing a family wound couldn't happen in a single day. It would take time, genuine remorse from them, and strength from us. But at least we still had each other to keep moving forward. That night we sat around the dinner table telling silly stories to lift the mood. Alice giggled when I made funny faces. Life went on, scarred but filled with new hope. Ariana grew stronger every day, and I knew that one day the door might open again, but for now, our little home was enough. Time passed swiftly like the Oregon winds, sweeping away autumn leaves, carrying with them the painful memories that slowly faded. Life for the three of us settled into a steady rhythm. No more sleepless nights filled with fear. No more mornings waking up dreading that Ray might return. I decided to rent a larger, brighter house on the outskirts of Portland, a modest 2-story home with a lush green backyard, big enough for the little family I never thought I'd have. The old apartment had grown too cramped for 3, and with the electronics repair shop doing well, I could finally afford it. Every morning we left the house together, a quiet ritual marking our new beginning. First I drove Alice to school. She bounced out of the car with her princess backpack, beaming, "Today we're painting, Uncle Adam." Then I dropped Ariana at the cafe, where she was now trusted with more responsibility, from making drinks to managing the morning shift. "Have a good day," she'd say, kissing my cheek before stepping inside, the scent of freshly roasted coffee trailing behind her. I went on to the shop, which was thriving thanks to regular customers and word of mouth from the news stories. People came steadily, students with broken laptops, families needing security systems, and I worked with greasy hands and a full heart. Those mornings under Oregon's clear post-rain sky made life feel like a calm river after years of raging storms. In the evenings, we gathered around our simple but warm dinner table, a daily reminder that happiness lives in the small things. Ariana helped cook. She chopped vegetables while I stir-fried meat, and the smell of food filled the house, washing away the day's fatigue. Alice told us little stories from school in her chirping voice. Today I played tag with Lily, and I was the fastest. We laughed loudly, sharing funny tales about odd customers at the shop or difficult patrons at the cafe. The house rang with laughter we once thought we'd never hear again. Real, unforced laughter with no fear hiding behind it. I remember one night while washing dishes, Ariana leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Adam, I never thought I'd have evenings like this. So peaceful." I turned and hugged her, feeling the warmth of a body that had once been frail from starvation, now healthy again from regular meals and deep sleep. As for our parents, though they never showed up in person, every now and then gifts and handwritten apology letters arrived for Ariana. Small things. A new doll for Alice, a scarf for Ariana, a box of cookies, accompanied by hesitant lines revealing late-blooming remorse. "My daughter, I'm sorry. I know this apology comes too late, but I hope one day you can forgive your father and me," Mom wrote in one letter, the handwriting shaky. Dad wrote less, but once included an old family photo with a short note. "I hope you can forgive me. I'm sorry." Ariana read them calmly, no longer angry. She sat by the window holding the letters for a long time, then whispered to me, "I don't hate them anymore, Adam. But it's not forgiveness yet. The wounds are too deep. They need time to heal. I nodded. I understood that pain of abandonment doesn't vanish easily no matter how many seasons pass. We didn't reply right away. We simply stored the letters in a small wooden box, part of a past slowly closing. I understood better than anyone. Family wounds are the hardest to heal because they come from the very people who were supposed to love us unconditionally. I didn't push Ariana, didn't try to force reconciliation with phone calls or arranged meetings. Instead, I let time do its work, trusting that genuine remorse might one day open a brighter door for all of us. Some nights after Ariana was asleep, I sat alone in the living room thinking about our parents, about the cold house in Salem now. The nights they surely lay awake with regret. My heart still ached, but the anger was gone. Only a quiet sadness remained, like a cool autumn breeze. I told myself, maybe one day our family will reconnect. But right now, Ariana and Alice come first. One afternoon, as golden sunset light bathed the backyard, I stood quietly watching Ariana and Alice play. She chased Alice across the green grass, their laughter ringing out, sunlight weaving a picture of peace we wouldn't have dared dream of 4 years ago. Ariana wore a simple floral dress, hair dancing in the wind, looking again like the lively 22-year-old she once was. Alice squealed, clutching a ball, her face radiant and free of fear. I stood at the back door holding a cup of cold coffee, realizing my life had changed forever the moment I stepped into that wretched shack and found my sister, and the true meaning of family. 4 years ago, I was a lonely bachelor drifting through days filled with work and guilt. Now I was the pillar of a small family, carrying responsibilities and joys I never imagined. From loss, violence, betrayal, and the heartlessness of those who should have protected us, I learned that the greatest strength lies not in fists or shouts, but in standing up for the people you love. Ray with his iron fists, our parents with their cruel words, they were all shadows. But shadows cannot extinguish the light of sibling love, of a mother's love for their child. The lesson I carry is this: in the darkest moments, if even one person stands by your side, the world becomes far less terrifying. The way I stood by Ariana, the way she stood by Alice, a fragile yet unbreakable chain that pulled us through hell. And my advice to anyone who has suffered like Ariana: you are not weak for asking for help. You are choosing to survive, to keep living, so that one day light can find you again. I remember the nights Ariana cried alone in the hospital, the moments she hesitated to call the police out of fear of revenge. But when she finally spoke, when she leaned on me, everything changed. Life is not always fair, but if you dare take one small step, hope will follow. Now, watching Ariana and Alice beneath the sunset, I know that is true. We survived, and now we are truly living, with all the joy and peace we deserve.